third segment, which is going to be talking about the Miami Marlins and some updates around their team and just the rotation. So, yeah, let's get into it. The Marlins are not a team I really talk about much in the show for a good reason because, simply put, they're really, really bad. I had them very low on my power rankings on Friday. Obviously, one of the worst teams in baseball have already started to give up on the season, trading one of their better players, Luis Arias, in the middle of May, which never happens. So, obviously, the Marlins are not a team that I think highly of, and I don't think are very good. But there was some news about them over the deadline, and I did want to talk about it. So, yeah, first of all, they placed two of their starting pitchers, Jesus Luzardo and Braxton Garrett, on the IL, both with arm injuries, so that was pretty significant. Now, Luzardo was having a really, really rough season so far with the Marlins, was doing really, really poorly. A guy that was potentially going to be looked at as the biggest piece traded at this deadline. I mean, I forgot which insider said it, but one of the big MLB insiders said that Luzardo was the single most likely player to be traded at the MLB deadline, and we will be talking about it later, but I think this definitely hurt him. I mean, you look at his season right now, you look at his ERA, he had a 5 ERA in 12 games started. Really, really rough go of it for them. And yeah, his K per 9 was down over 3, his walk per 9 was up. And yeah, he's just having a really, really rough season. And I think potentially going on the IL could help him out and just give him a little bit of time off for this Marlins team and be able to regroup himself and become the pitcher that the Marlins and the league knows and loves. So also with that, they placed Braxton Garrett on the IL again with an arm injury. Was scratched from one of his starts recently. So Garrett, of course, did pay the price for that, and it did have to end up going on the IL. Now, I don't think either of these should be long-term injuries. Luzardo maybe has a higher chance of that. But again, it's just at this point, two younger arms, guys who either are going to be big pieces for you in the future or are going to be big trade pieces. You obviously have to make sure that they are fully taken care of, and you have to be very, very cautious with them. So being overcautious right now, I think, is the right decision, especially when you really have nothing to play for. So I think it was a good job for the Marlins there. But yeah, going to Luzardo now, reported by Craig Mish, who is one of the best Marlins people on the internet. If you do not follow his Twitter account, and you do have Twitter for baseball news, please do. He is one of the best Marlins guys. He did report, once Luzardo was placed on the IL, that it was likely that the Marlins would not be trading him now because of the rough season he had. And I thought that was very interesting. Again, I did a segment on Luzardo being the most likely player to be traded at the deadline, so hearing that was kind of a step back for me. It made sense, but also was not something that I was expecting. So, do I agree with the decision? Do I not? And what are the effects it is going to have on the Marlins? So, first of all, I do agree with the decision. I think Luzardo is a really fantastic player, and I just don't think that the Marlins should trade him at his lowest value. This is a guy who has been a very consistent pitcher for the Marlins over the past 2 years, started a playoff game for them last year, and I think he has a lot of value left, and trading him just to trade him, I really think makes no sense. You have 2.5 years of control left on Luzardo, and just because you're bad doesn't mean you can trade him. You can go into the offseason when he's fully healthy, he's not being roughed up in the year, and have really a full out bidding war, because a young starting pitcher with potential like Luzardo, who has been as good as he has, really does not come around a lot. And with all the teams that need pitching, not just in season but in the future as well, I think you could really get a lot back for him. So I do agree with the decision. I don't think you should have traded him just to trade him. And I think holding on to him because of the season he is having, because of the injuries he is having, is the right decision. I mean, you could really get a top 100 prospect for Luzardo in the offseason. And again, just trading him at his lowest value really made no sense to me ever. So I do agree with the decision from the Marlins, and I think it is the right one. Now, with the Marlins, looking at their deadline, it is going to be very interesting to watch. I mean, what's very obvious with the Marlins is that Peter Bendix wants his own team. I mean, shipping out Arias in May already was just a sign of that. Okay, this is his team now. He's going to build it the way he wants it. He wants his players. And, so I think no matter how good you are, if you were part of the old regime, I think you're going to be shipped out. I mean, I look at guys like Josh Bell, like Jake Burger, guys who were big deadline additions last year who just got there, that are going to be traded and are going to get something back from the Marlins. Now, again, there are some pieces on this Marlins team again in the deadline that are going to get a lot back. I think Burger and Bell really aren't I don't know if Berger's going to be traded. I think Bell is definitely going to be traded. Some team's going to take him, but looking at a guy like Tanner Scott. Tanner Scott, I think, is going to get a significant amount back, is probably the best bullpen arm on this market pretty easily, is a lefty, big strikeout stuff, one of the best closers in baseball since coming over from Baltimore in a trade a few years ago, has done wonders with Miami, so they'll get a really good prospect back for him. I mean, basically every single team needs bullpen help nowadays, whether it's the Yankees, whether it's the Orioles, whether it's the Guardians create a super pen and get him. I don't know. Royals, I think, are the most likely fit for Tanner Scott. I think out of all the true contenders, they have the most obvious need for a bullpen arm, and I think they are going to end up being very aggressive in getting him. They don't have the best. They don't have the best farm system, but if there is a guy the Marlins do end up liking, I think that Scott to the Royals makes a ton of sense, and really just is the most likely situation for it. So I think that would make a lot of sense there. The really interesting one I'm watching is Jazz Chisholm. If Jazz Chisholm gets traded at this deadline, that will be a huge, huge story. Not just because of how good he is, but as we know, Jazz Chisholm is one of the faces of baseball, whether you like it or not. He's on a very fun team. Well, they were fun before they ended up being horrible this year. Plays the game with a lot of energy. He's very known because of what he did the past few years when the Marlins were good, being on the cover of MLB The Show, his whole personality. So I think he is going to get a little bit more back than his skill level because he is a name and because he is marketable. So I'm very, very intrigued to see if the Marlins do end up trading Jazz Chisholm, and that would really signal to me that this is a full-on fire sale. I mean, if it wasn't already, but I think Chisholm is really a very, very interesting person to watch. And if a team does acquire him, where are they going to play him is another question. Of course, is a natural-born shortstop and second baseman, but did move to center field for the convenience of the Marlins. So will a team keep him at center field? Will they keep him at second? Will they move him to short? So it's going to be very interesting to watch Chisholm, his market evolve, and teams that could look to trade for him. I know he's been mentioned with the Dodgers, which I think makes a lot of sense, but again, him and Miguel Rojas kind of have a beef going, so I'm not sure if that would happen. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting for me to watch where Chisholm does end up going and what his market does end up looking like throughout the year. So yeah, I'll be very, very excited to see Chisholm trade, to see if Chisholm does get traded again. I love the trade deadline. I love watching what happens, and I'm very, very excited to end up seeing where these players do go. And I think Chisholm is one of the biggest parts of this. So it's a very interesting time to be a Marlins fan. The team is going to look very, very different in the near future, and yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Now, looking at this Marlins future, I think it's very interesting to think about next year. Of course, Bendix has no problem shipping on players that were part of the old core, but you're getting Yuri Perez back most likely, probably in the start of next year. Same with Sandy Alcantara. If you don't trade Luzardo, you have your top three back. You're going to have Alcantara, you're going to have Perez, you're going to have Luzardo, you're going to have Braxton Garrett, probably Noble Mayer is going to come up. Max Mayer might be back as well. So you're going to have, again, amazing rotation depth. And if you're the Marlins, you say, okay, you know what, we were bad last year, but we're getting people back now. We didn't trade Luzardo. Are we going to go for it again? And this Marlins team, if they do get their injured players back, Alcantara, Luzardo now I guess is injured, Braxton Garrett, Yuri Perez, do you potentially look to go for it next year? I mean, the rotation would be great. You don't have much pieces on offense, but I'm sure you could figure out a way. So the Marlins' future looks very, very interesting, and I, for one, am very excited to watch it. I think overall it is going to be a fascinating team and franchise to end up seeing. And yeah, I am just very interested to see how this team and this future does play out right now. And I think it's going to be one of the biggest storylines of the offseason and this trade deadline as well. Again, they have a lot of pieces to sell, whether that is Josh Bell, Jake Burger, Jazz Chisholm, Tanner Scott. They could even trade one of the starting pitchers, I guess. Brian De La Cruz as well as someone that could go. So overall, the Marlins are in a very, very interesting spot right now. And Peter Bendix has a world of decisions ready for him. I think he's ready for it. A guy I wanted to run the Mets job back when he was available. So I think very highly of him. Really, anyone from that Rays or Dodgers trade, I think very high of. And of course, Bendix came from Tampa Bay. So yeah, overall, the Marlins have a very interesting couple of weeks ahead of them, ahead of July 31st. So we're very interested to watch. Past the deadline and just the future of this team. So yeah, I'm very intrigued and very excited to see what they end up doing. So that is our second segment here, talking about the Marlins and some updates around them. moving into our fourth segment, which is going to be talking about the Seattle Mariners and the news that they are looking for a big bat at the deadline. So yeah, we'll be going over that, and we'll see you after the break. So thanks, and bye. Here we go.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts.